Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh, wow, do we have a great show for you. Listen, here's the deal. Right now, there's a lot of stuff going on in the financial world. If you haven't been paying attention, well, you probably should be, because there's a lot of things happening right now that are just all over the place. And you know what? I get it. People are concerned about their finances. They're concerned about what they don't have. They're concerned about what they do have. Can they preserve what they have? Can I get more? Can I build more? How do I get this to work? And it's just all terribly confusing for a number of reasons. But also, we know something about finances that we don't often talk about. And the truth of the matter is, when it comes to our marriage relationships, do you know when the number one sources of divorce are? It's finances.
Mhm.
When it comes to divorce, and we don't talk about it, but it really is true. And wouldn't it be great if we could have somebody help us, get a better mindset and attitude and some practical, useful advice to help us take the next step?
Right.
You know what? I'm bringing it back because the book was so good, and he's so good, right? And his name is Erik Weir. I'm going to bring back today. The book's called "Who's Eating Your Pie." It's a fabulous book. Matter of fact, some of you who are financial advisors out there who've reached out to me said, this has been a great book. And so I appreciate you purchasing this book. So thank you. I've had several financial advisors who have said to me all across the country, hey, I purchased the book. Wow. So folks, I'm listening. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a financial advisor. I'm just telling you that Who's Eating Your Pie is a book for you to purchase. By the way, you can get it on Kindle. It's fantastic. However you like to read, it's a great book. I'm going to be talking to Erik Weir in just a second. But before I get to him, let's do what we do every week real quick. Hey, listen, we're 4-part people: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people, right? And we all know that if we're not working on those areas every day of our life in some way, the truth of the matter is, if you're not growing, you're dying. We never stay stagnant. So what we do on the show is on a scale of 1 to 10, I have you rate yourself of where you're at. Now, we don't worry about what your exact number is. That's just a starting point for you to say, hey, I could do better, right? And as Erik talks about in his book, he says, you can always do 1% better. Wherever you're at, you can always do 1% more, right? That's all we're asking, is whatever the number that I give you in each one of these areas, just do 1% more. All right, so physically, if you were to evaluate your scale on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being awful, 10 being outstanding, how would you rate yourself? Getting enough exercise, eating right, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep? What would you give you? 5 being average, right? Now, again, right, if you're a 2, what can you do to be 1% better? Right? If you're a 7, what can you do to be 1% better? That's the question, right? No judgment, just what can you do to be better in those areas? All right, that's your first number. Second number, all right, is your mental intellectual number, right? Can't sit on a couch watching TV and expect that you're just going to grow, learn in knowledge and wisdom, right? You get information, but are you growing in knowledge and wisdom in what you do, in who you are, in your relationships, those type of things, right? You got 2 halves of your brain. Right side's creative, left side's logical. How are you feeding it? You have to be an active participant in your learning. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself in your mental intellectual area? Okay, that's your second number. Third number is the emotional number. And we break it down real simply to evaluate yourself emotionally. 1, how able are you to control your emotions under stress and pressure? And then secondly, how well are you able to tap into and understand the emotions of others? That second part requires what we call active listening. It also requires that you have an emotional vocabulary, that you can understand those emotions. But it's incredibly important for any success is that we improve our emotional intelligence and our emotional quotient. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing there? All right, that's your third number. The fourth number is the spiritual area. And the truth of the matter is, some of you say, well, I'm not really spiritual at all. Well, we're all spiritual. Remove the physical, the mental, and the emotional. What you have left is the spiritual. And the truth of the matter is, we walk by faith every day. You probably have plans to do something every day, right? And they haven't occurred yet, but you believe they will. That's faith. And then there's the question, I always like people to say, when it comes to the spirit, we all have a spirit inside of us, the spirit of the human spirit that wants to connect with something that can bring us peace and joy in the midst of chaos. in the midst of our circumstances? What might that be for you? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it meditation? Is it working? What do you need to change it? The truth of the matter is, you say, well, I can't see the spiritual part. I said, well, you can't see the wind either. Where did that come from? But yet, you can see the results of what the wind does.
Mhm.
That's what the spiritual part is. The spiritual part is you may not be able to see it, but there are results from what you get from it. Those four areas are like the air in your tires of your car, right? If one tire is really low, what happens? The car leans. It's not working efficiently. It doesn't run efficiently on gas. It doesn't work well. It doesn't do right. If all four of them too low, well, you can ruin the car. Certainly the rims over the course of time. And speaking of someone who's got his air in his tires all the right levels, his name's Erik Weir. He is principal of WCM Global Wealth LLC, a wealth advisory firm that serves clients from the biggest multi-platinum, Grammy-winning recording artists, celebrities, sports icons, and clothes designers, and more, and families listed on the Forbes billionaires list, as well as other notable business owners. As an investor, he's developed top golf locations all over the U.S. and in Europe. He's also been a previous owner of WTA Media, which is film marketing and finance. And he's an expert on wealth building and entrepreneurism, goal setting, real estate investment, money management, marketing, and promotion. He speaks to corporations all across the country each year. He's a lifelong student. He's earned his degrees and certificates from Harvard University, Georgia State University. He's got 5 sons, and he spends his time between Charleston and Greenville, South Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, and welcome back for a second time, Erik Weir. Erik, welcome back to the show.
Great. Thanks for having me on. And I'm tired just hearing that. So, and living it's a little tiring too, I can tell you.
Yeah, well, you've been doing it for a while, so you might be a little tired. You
Yeah.
never know how to do it. All right, so listen, we talked about a lot about the intro of this book, and I know we're going to talk about a number of topics today.
Yeah.
Because, people are going to want to talk about the SVB Bank, what's going on there, and I do want to address that at some point. But there's a couple things that we didn't get to that I just feel are really, really important when it comes to investing. And so people, folks, if you're watching the show right now, we did a previous show, so you might want to get watch the show. If you're watching us on DBTV all over the world, by the way, thank you for watching. If you're listening to us on podcast, you might want to get the earlier podcast as well to listen to the show. But in chapter 5, you said something about what stops us. The chapter is called "What's Stopping You."
Yeah.
And you talked about in the book how guilt and depressed image can get in our way and prevent us from identifying where we are and where we want to go. But there are 3 basically big emotional blockers that stop us in our tracks. The first one you mentioned is fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think fear is so powerful, but help us understand, because you talk about being afraid to dream, you talk about being afraid to face opportunity, you talk about fear to take action. Help us understand those 3 fears and put those in perspective.
Yeah, fear is a powerful emotion, and and I think people believe lies too. You believe lies about yourself. You were told you can't do it, or you'll never amount to anything, and those reinforce your fears. And sometimes our behaviors, our actions, will actually go further to reinforce our fears.
Right.
But I tell people that fear doesn't pay dividends, but consistency does. And if you make small changes every day, a small step, like what would you like to do, or I'm in debt, or whatever it happens to be, write a question: how do I get out of debt? How do I do this? Write 5 or 6 potential ways, take action, and you'll find that your fear and your anxiety, they go down. And fear is really bringing potential adverse future outcomes into today. So they're generally over things that haven't happened, yet they cause concern and anxiety, and they limit us today. So pushing through fear and having logical tools to recognize it and address it, I find to be very beneficial.
You make a statement about fear in this chapter. You say that you ask a question. You say, you want to know the difference between between a successful person and unsuccessful person's view of fear. Unsuccessful people view fear, and they look at loss, and so therefore they never take. So they have a prevention mindset, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas successful people see fear as an opportunity. Help us navigate those two between the successful and unsuccessful?
Yeah, it's kind of like if you're sitting here saying, I'm afraid if I start this new company, uh, I may fail. Or if I take this new risk or this new job or I move to a new city, it may not be what I expect it to be, or I may come up short. And as you begin to realign your thinking, you look at opportunity cost, and there's an accounting cost called cost. Like if you drive a if you have a job paying $10 an hour, then that you have an income. But what's your cost? Well, if you could make $20 an hour, then that's your cost. That job's cost you $10 an hour.
Mm.
And trying to think of life as what opportunity costs. Because if you people say, well, what if I fail? What if you don't? What if you succeed? And
Mm.
the invoice for quitting is a terribly high invoice. And I've had setbacks and will continue to have setbacks my whole life. I'm sure of it. But from a setback, I use it as a teaching moment. What would I do differently? What would I try now? Who else can I talk to? Who can I? Are there any things I can do to move ahead more quickly? So fear of loss is one, but I like to look at it as a motivator. Like, what if I don't do something? So I acknowledge, hey, if it doesn't work out, this is what happens. But then I burn my boats on the shore, so I'm not going back. So it's all the way in. And when you have the mentality is I'm sticking to it, I'm committed to it, I'm going to make change, I'm going to be progressive. Yes, I'll have setbacks, but I'm going to get right back up and keep going. Then you can look at the fear of not doing it. It ends up almost becoming a motivator.
And isn't it true? I found this true of coaching clients that I work with, is that sometimes when I see this fear crop up and they're afraid to do something, I often will say, well, isn't it kind of 50-50? I mean, because it's like you keep focusing on, well, what if I fail? But what if you succeed?
Right.
Right? I mean, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, okay, you're focused on what if I fail, but what if you succeed?
Yeah. Yeah. And what I try to do is live in the future. People try to pull fear into the current, saying, these are things I'm afraid will happen, or I try this new job and I fail. I actually live in the future of being like, I'm enjoying the future before it's here. I now have my new company. I will succeed. I can do 100 push-ups. I can do these things, even when I can only maybe do 15, or I weigh 205 pounds when I may weigh 220 and I want to weigh 205. So I have the mindset. And then when you start thinking that way, then you start having the habits, the activities, and the diet of somebody who weighs 205 pounds, of somebody who weighs 220. But it's really that way with everything is calling your future into existence today.
Mm. One of the things you say at the end of this, at the end of this little section here of fear, is you say sometimes the best thing to do is to do it scared. And I wrote when I wrote my last book, the first chapter is sometimes you have to do things afraid. And I think what people miss is that doing things afraid build perseverance.
They do.
And and the more that you will face your fear and do it, it's that perseverance. It's a I call it a perseverance muscle. I know it doesn't really exist in the real world, but it does in your brain. And I often wonder how many people just need to develop that perseverance muscle. What do you think?
So many people are conditioned at the first no. And if we're not born that way. If anybody who has a toddler, they'll ask you for something 55 times, and they understand. They keep going and they get it ultimately. Like, yes, yes, whatever. Let me sleep here. Here you go. Here's a gummy bear or whatever. They wear you down, right? And
Right.
something along the line, you lose that. But if you think like a toddler and you become focused on where you want to go, it's amazing how much more you can accomplish. But persistence and consistency is it. I mean, I may not have any particular gifts. I may not have any greater than other people, but I'll be persistent and I'll be consistent and I'll work and I'll get up and I'll get at it again and again and again and again and again and again. And when I have a setback, I use it as a motivation. What do I learn? How do I push forward? And I've got that behind me. So now let's go. So I think persistence and clarity, knowing where you want to go, is very important. Because if you're persistent and decided, but you're uncertain of where you're going, then that's not very helpful.
The second blocker you mentioned, it's related. I think it's so related to fear, is bad expectation.
Right, right.
Right? we have these bad expectations, and you say that it often prevents us from getting where we want to go. It steals our joy once we get there, is bad expectations. And you talk about expectations for a type of life, expectations for recognition. Help us understand how bad expectations are such a blocker for us.
There's two things: the person's joy, uh, and the closer the reality is their expectations. Oftentimes, the happier they are, right? So that's one thing. And secondly, and I'll give you the coaching example. I had some people sitting around a table. I was telling, I'm going to show you today how to double your business this year. And I said, was thinking, and I mentioned for a minute, and I said, stop. And I mentioned fear and all that before. And I said, just stop for a second. Raise your hand if the first thought you have wasn't how to double your business, it's why it won't happen.
Mm,
And everyone raised, I've got a reason why it won't happen. And
mm,
that was your first thought, wasn't it? It wasn't enjoying, being more charitable or having more financial security or helping others or, living in it wasn't that. It was the first thought was why you couldn't do it, justifying it, and recognizing that, arresting those thoughts, taking them captive, and then spending time thinking about what would it be like to win this. And what I try to tell people to do is plan with I go into like a thought process is I can't fail.
yeah.
No matter what I want to do, I'm going to succeed. I don't need to. The money will be there, the expertise, the connections, the network, everything. And what would I attempt if I knew I couldn't fail? That's where I start. And then I work my way back because I will need money. I will need talents I obviously don't have. I will need connections and networks. And then I think about what that looks like. And then I build a plan anticipating all that. But I don't start with limiting thoughts. I start with unlimited thoughts. What would I do if I knew I couldn't fail?
Mm.
And then I build it backwards.
I love that so much. All right, the third blocker that you have is comparison living, and I think this
Mm.
is so dangerous,
Oh,
especially because we see this so often on social media, right? People are, they like to promote the best of themselves, right, in a particular lifestyle, and so we view the pictures on Instagram or wherever, and we start comparison living. So
that's
help
so
us, yeah, help us understand what are we doing to ourselves here?
it's so interesting. I talked to Miss South Carolina, former Miss South Carolina, on my podcast. I think it was last week, Hope Harvard, and she now would like to move on maybe to Miss America. And she said she had thoughts of herself being ugly, thoughts of herself not liking her nose or this or that. And she ended up talking to beauty contestants, and each girl could tell them straight up, I don't like my nose. I don't like my profile. I don't like my chin. One ear's a little higher than the other. One eye's a little bigger. And every one of these girls had something they focused on that they just couldn't see. And what she said to them is, in God's eyes, you're beautiful.
Right.
And slowly each one of them started to change their perspective of how they see it, whose eyes they see themselves through. And I think that's a powerful lesson.
It is a powerful lesson. You offer some advice here how to push past the obstacles. You say step 1 is to own everything. What do you
Yeah.
mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I've made plenty of mistakes, in my life, and I'll continue to make mistakes. And I think that many people spend their time where you could just say, I had a part in it. Maybe had a small part, maybe had a big part, but it probably wasn't all of it in most cases. So you try to assess blame. Well, maybe had 99%, but they were part of the problem also, right? Or maybe it was 50-50, we split the problem. If you just own it and say, it's my fault, I want to move on, and I want to learn from it, and you're not trying to point blame at other people, it's a wonderful way to live, because you live a lot less anxiety, and you can move on more quickly. If you're waiting for somebody to apologize or make restitution or say, yeah, I really did you wrong, you may be waiting a very long time, and they may not even know that you're even thinking about it or even know to offer that to you. So to the extent you can just have ownership, then it's great. And the good news about that is, if you own it, then you're the one who's in control of when you can move on. And if you don't own it and it's somebody else's fault, then they're in control of you.
Wow, that's awesome right there. I hope you got all that. By the way, thanks for everybody who's chiming in, listening, and watching the show. We really do appreciate you. The book is titled "Who's Eating Your Pie?" It's a question, right? It's by Erik Weir. He's here, and you're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, let me talk about my sponsors, Epic Eric. Epic physical therapy, not epic physical therapy. My physical therapist, they should be yours too. Listen, if you're suffering from everyday aches and pains, you've recently had surgery, or perhaps maybe you're an athlete, a professional athlete that just wants to improve. Listen, when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, go to epicpt.com. That's epicpt.com. And Linda Craft Team Realtors, for more than 38 years, they have been helping people transition in life. You say, well, they're a real estate company. Truth of the matter is, if you think about it, every time you've ever moved somewhere, it has been a transition in life. It always has been. Whether you're upsizing, downsizing, moving from an apartment to your first house, whatever it may be, it's a transition in life. Well, for over 38 years, they've been helping people make that transition smooth by taking the stress as much as they possibly can out of that transition. So when you're ready to make your next transition in life, whether you're selling your home or buying a home, go to Linda Craft Team Realtors. You can do that by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Erik Weir, his book, Who's Eating Your Pie? We're going to be talking a little bit more about this book, and we're going to get into some other topics as well before the end of the hour. The step 2 in terms of overcoming these obstacles, you say, look for opportunities where others see limits. And you start off with a statement that says you get to choose what kind of person you want to be. Help us understand how looking for opportunities where others see limits, how do we do that, and what should we be doing in terms of our mindset and maybe even actions?
Well, that's a good question. There are limits everywhere. Today, you have people worried about loans, or worried about house prices, or worried about anything, and the other people see downfall or hurt, and I see opportunity. Going directly to the limits. When I was a child, I was in a car wreck and lost the ability to speak, and I stuttered terribly from age 5 to through high school, then less so. And one day I became grateful. I was in church service and I was like, hey, be grateful for the things you have to struggle with, and I thank God for it. And that was a very hard thing to say, but embracing that limit and being grateful for it changed my life for me. So depending on what the limit is, maybe having gratitude for that limit, and see if that doesn't change your perspective and your outlook on things. And then if you have other limits, if it's resources or capital or intellect, the more you get to clarity in your life, the more you can find people to help you with those limits and overcome and conquer very many obstacles. But limits to me are, and everyone will have them. So if you open a company from 1 to 5 people, then you have that's your limit, right? You got to increase your managerial skill. Then you go to 10 or 15 or 20. So we're all going to hit limits all the time. And the quicker you identify them, the quicker you accept them, and the quicker you think about logical ways to overcome them, either through yourself or through partnership or affiliation or education, you'll climb through those. You begin to actually anticipate and look forward to the next limit, because all that means is it's just another victory that you're about to overcome.
What do you throw in here? Apply the laws of focus and attraction
Mm-hmm.
as a way to kind of help us move past these obstacles. What do you mean by apply the laws of focus and attention? What are those, and why is that so powerful?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So focus, when I'm focused on something, then your mind is thinking about it. And I'll give you 2 examples. If I'm looking for toothpaste, right, and I think it's a green toothpaste and it happens to be a blue toothpaste, I can open the drawer, look for the green toothpaste. I don't find it. And the blue's right there looking at me. But I'm focused on green and I won't even see blue. So that's interesting in life. And when I focus on success or focus on attaining something, then I don't get distracted by the other things. I'm looking for my goal all the time. And what's interesting, the laws of attraction, you tend to attract people into your life, resources, things, timing that align with your goals and objectives. I'll give you a simple example. If you didn't own a Tesla, you may see 1 Tesla on the road a day, 2 or 3. Then you buy a red 3 Series Tesla, and you see, wow, they're everywhere. Teslas are everywhere. Well, Teslas didn't multiply 100x the next day. Your mind became attuned to noticing that. And it's the same thing if you're trying to be in a relationship or try to learn or find interesting people or encouragement or resources, anything you're looking for. When your mind is focused on it, you'll find it 100 times faster than if you're not.
Mm. I love that example of Tesla. I found this to be true when I bought my Jeep Rubicon. There's this habit that Jeep people have. If you have a Jeep, they wave at each other, right? And I started because I become so focused on the waving part of it. I feel like my hand is up all the time, right? It's
Right.
right because I'm waving at all these. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Other Jeep, yeah, the Jeep lifestyle. It's actually a thing. I understand. I don't own a Jeep, but
yeah, it is. It's this
one
really
of my
crazy.
friends has a Jeep, and they're like, he's into his Jeep, So it's
Yeah,
cool.
it's this crazy thing, and everybody's got a Jeep. Now you tell me you don't. I don't believe you. I think you probably do. You just tell me because I think everybody does because I'm so focused on seeing Jeeps, right?
Right, right,
But does
right,
everybody have one in their household? They must because
right,
my hands worn out from being on my steering wheel. You know,
right,
hey,
right,
hey, hey. So
right.
I totally understand, and it's really
Yeah,
true, and it really can apply to our finances.
yeah.
I mean, chapter 6. There's something that you say here I want to just hit on, and it's called bridging the gaps. And you say people who hate their job
Mm,
are wasting their lives.
mm,
And I just want to make a point because I have a friend who, when Sunday night rolls around, he goes into dread
mhm.
for Monday morning. Goes into dread, just total dread. I mean, he's successful, he's making it, but he just dreads Monday. That's a problem, isn't
Oh yeah, it's a terrible problem.
it?
Yeah, I'd be planning my exit like by Friday. I'm out of here. Life is so short, man. You
Right.
just so many people. You have a health issue, and you're like, oh, man, it's just way too short for that.
Yeah. Yeah. You say that there's 4 gaps. There's vocation, education, time, and attitude.
Right.
And, vocation gap, we've kind of talked about a little bit, but if we were to go into that vocation gap, you talk about following passions and being fulfilled. You want to push that button a little bit more?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. There was somebody I knew in the vocation gap. They were a assistant at a real estate company, and they've been around realtors and people doing very well business, and they had a particular aptitude for selling, but they didn't really have. They thought maybe they couldn't pull it off, and this particular person then went to real estate school, and then they started listening to selling tapes, and then was given excellent service as an assistant. Said, "Hey, I'm going to give it a whirl as a realtor," and they did, and they 5x their income like over the next year. And that's the kind of thing where we put limitations on ourselves, and sometimes will have abilities we're not even using. I've heard of people who are very talented in a field, but they're applying their wit and their knowledge and time in a completely another area. And if you find something that you believe you're good at, and then you invest, hours upon hours of getting better at it, you'll become really like world class. And this we call it 10,000 hours or 2,000 hours. But if you spend time honing something you're good at, you'll get so much better. And it's kind of like the vocation gap. I mean, if you're a good salesperson, you become a good manager, you become a good owner, and just wherever you want to go in a structure or organization, by executing and leaning in, you'll go very, very far.
I tell people, we started this show 5 years ago, and I do not have a communications degree. I've never taken a broadcasting degree. I've never taken a broadcasting class. I don't even know what one is.
Hmm.
And but I love what I do.
Right.
I love doing this show. And so I just as an example, I started studying Larry King, because I just feel like Larry King was a great interviewer. And so I started studying Larry King, and I kept putting in the time, and I started guest hosting other shows, and I started, asking questions to authors. This is how it started way before 5 years. So I was on somebody else's show and I was doing it, and somebody pushed me into this and said, "You got to do it because you're good at it." And over the course of time, I keep learning and keep learning because I've never stopped.
Right.
I'm always trying to find, how can I ask a better question?
Hmm.
What can I ask that's going to appeal to the audience, right? And I keep telling people, even when I speak, I keep saying to them, you know what? You have things inside you don't even know because you're
Yep.
afraid to look at those passions.
Right.
Right? And then it's that education gap. Then it's on you again, right? To
Hmm.
take control of your education,
Right.
right?
Right.
Make yourself better. You say better yourself, not just your paycheck.
Oh, 100% invest in yourself. I'm taking courses right now, at Harvard, and I'm doing it. It's not going to probably change my income, but it's something that I wanted to do, and it changes my ability to teach or have additional perspectives maybe I didn't have before. So I really enjoy it, and I encourage people. There's so many free sources online. There's so many things you can do. So how do you advance yourself intellectually, or just become the most interesting person in the room? Read a book a week, or audio books are fantastic for drive time, and learn different things. Focus on one area, but then learn about art, learn about history, learn about just whatever your fancy, and then maybe go outside of that a little bit. You'll be surprised how much maybe topics that you didn't think you might enjoy, you now really enjoy. And I was talking to a person. I was talking to a Navy SEAL on my show, and it was become a friend. And he was talking about some of their training, and I thought this is so interesting. And some of the things they do, and everything you can think of in the world has way more complexity and way more to it than you can imagine. And when you begin to study other people's fields and what they've done, it gives you just more appreciation for other people, and it allows you to live a life with maybe a little bit more gratitude.
Yeah, it really does, and live a better life,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, right? Because it's not like you said, I feel like I'm living my best life because I'm doing the things that I love doing. I'm good at them, and that actually are helping others,
right,
right? I feel like I have a
right,
bigger purpose here.
sure,
And so, I feel like we're impacting a world. I mean, you and I today, what we're doing is, we're available to over 250 million people right now, right?
right,
Can watch the show. And you and I right now are making a positive impact on the world. That's what I believe. And that's what I believe my purpose is that we're going to change a new direction. We're going to give people, and I think when you have that and you're so passionate about it, that it changes you. And you don't want anything else but
right. So
to do that.
yeah, and to inspire other people to see the world as a bigger place. And
Yeah.
I had a person that I mentioned in the book who was, making $25,000 a year, and when I first met them, and I didn't take him as a coaching client, I just gave advice periodically. I said, "Do you want me to be honest?" And yeah, I want you to be honest. And I gave him different advice, things to look at, and then to look and have perspective and use a skill set. And he's making like 200,000 now, some 10 years later, but he went from 25 to 100,000 in probably 24 months. And it wasn't starting a business. It was, finding new positions and getting promoted within his own company because he was able to so change his value. And I think whether you're an employee or self-employed, everyone's self-employed. And you want to create an environment where you're such a good employee that they want to keep you, and they pay you more without you even ever having to ask, because the thought of losing you is overwhelming. And how do you make your value higher to other people?
What's the time gap? That's the third one.
Yeah, the time gap is just it's we oftentimes think it'll take too much time to get something done. I could never do this. It may take me 6 months or a year or 3 years. And once you get started, it's like the law of compounding we talked about. If I can make 1% change a day over 10 days, it's 10% change. Over 72 days, it's not 72% change, it's 100%, because I'm making an incremental change on another incremental change. So there's a law of compounding takes over. And mathematically, anything you divide by 70 into 72, like 10% a year, if you make 10% change a year, in 7.2 years, you've doubled the investment or the change. But I try to accelerate that to 1% change a day. So then in 72 days, I'm at 100% change. 144 days, I've doubled the double. So I'm already I'm double that. Then another 72 days, you double the double the double. And I think that's the time perspective. Is we typically greatly overestimate what we can accomplish in a week or 2 weeks or a month. And then we wonderfully underestimate what we can accomplish over time with just consistency.
What's the attitude gap?
Attitude, I mean, attitude's really everything. And if I had to focus on any of those, I'd probably focus on attitude, because attitude controls your altitude. If you have a cheerful attitude, you have I can get it done out attitude, then you're going to go very far. The attitude gap is, how do you go from a negative attitude from where you are to a grateful positive attitude. And I've told my children a few lessons. One is, there's two types of people: those who are humble and those who are soon to be humble.
Yeah, right.
Because we're always having a chance to be humbled really in life, and it's a beautiful thing. And if your attitude is you don't take yourself too terribly seriously, but you, you push ahead. You're willing to make mistakes, but you're heading toward your whatever your true north is. I think it goes a long way and improves your attitude, gives you gratitude, which also gives you altitude.
It's interesting at the end of this chapter, you talk about overcoming resentment. And I
Ooh.
don't think people want to look at resentment and
Yeah.
how it plays in our role in success or lack of success. But it does. It's significant because there's no way if we're harboring resentment either towards a person or towards a situation or towards our past or towards anything else
Hmm.
that we can be the people that we are created to be. It's not
Right.
possible,
It's
right?
not. It,
And
it,
you
it,
have a you go ahead.
it consumes your energy, consumes your life. So if you're, and unforgiveness is right there with resentment. They're kind of sister emotions, really. So if you think about someone you have a grudge toward, or you're resentful for how you were treated, or how this happened, or a business deal gone bad, or a friend wasn't very kind to you, that energy you have kills creativity. It's very hard to be creative
Mm,
and at the same time be unforgiving or resentful, because those emotions overtake the creativity. And imagine if you've had a long day, your work, you're tired, and you've put in 15 hours, 18 hours, whatever it is, right? Not much sleep. How creative are you at that time?
mm.
You're just not. And it's the same thing with resentment and unforgiveness, as those emotions are very toxic to your system. They hurt you and they hold you back. And the prisoner you set free when you forgive somebody is yourself, because you're not changing them, but you're changing yourself. The only person you ever have the ability to change is yourself. And there's a parable. If I can change, when a young man said, "I want to change the world," right? Then he got a little older. I'll change my country. Then I'll change my state. I'll change my county. Well, gee whiz, I'll just try and change my family. And then he said, "I'll just change myself." And then later he goes, "By changing myself, I change my family. Then I change my county. Then I change my state." And it goes back the way. But you start with yourself, and you'll have a lot of impact. Trying to start with others is a lot. And that also goes back to your expectations and your reality. Your expectations are that person uh, will have something bad happen to them, or they owe me, or whatever. And then when your reality is I've released that person, then your expectations, your reality are equal, and you're free to be happy and move ahead.
I love your little 5-step process. I just want to run through it real quick here. Step 1, look for blessings. Step 2, learn from the pain. Step 3, help other people. Step 4, look for the lesson. And step 5, forgive. And I think, if anybody's out there and you're dealing with resentment, whatever that resentment is, do those 5 steps. I'm just, and the last one is the big one. Forgive, because sometimes you got to forgive others, but sometimes you need to forgive yourself, right? That's true.
You do. And sometimes, and people may be hearing this and say, "You just don't know what I face. You don't know." And that's so true. And it may be the most horrible thing you ever experienced. But forgiving and releasing somebody doesn't change. It changes you, and it changes your reality and your outcome. So I
Yeah.
think that's the big thing.
My wife has this saying, says, unforgiveness is and resentment is like drinking the poison and hoping someone else will die.
Yeah, that's a good example. That's right. That's
Right?
it. That's really good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Right? I mean, it's kinda
yeah,
like, and she says that, and she says that all the time, and the more I keep thinking about that, the more I go, "Oh, yeah, you know what? That's true." I'm harboring all this unforgiveness and resentment. I'm drinking the poison, I'm hoping the other person dies. That just doesn't make any
yeah.
sense.
Interesting. So the famous artist Van Gogh got so mad at someone he cut his own ear off. He's like,
Right.
yeah. He's a famous guy, a little squirrely, they say, but it's not too different. It's just an outward manifestation of an inward reality.
Yeah, it really is. His name is Erik Weir. The book is entitled "Who's Eating Your Pie?" And, by the way, it's essential financial advice that will transform your life. Listen, it's outstanding. You need to get your copy, wherever books are sold, Amazon, it doesn't matter. Find it in a version that works for you. It's awesome. As you could tell, you're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, Epic Physical Therapy. I know I talk about them so frequently. You're probably tired of me, but I don't get tired of them because their facility offers the most advanced top of the line equipment like the anti gravity treadmill, the Normatec compression sleeves, the Game Ready, my favorite. They're trained, certified, most comprehensive, cutting edge treatments available, things like blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, cupping, and that's just a
Mm.
few. Listen, When you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, don't go any further. Go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft Team Realtors for more than 38 years, helping people transition in life by helping them, whether they're selling or buying, move into that next transition. Listen, folks, you know what? Buying and selling real estate is not as easy as everybody wants to think. Everybody thinks that it's so easy. You need someone who's going to look out for your best interest. And you want someone who's got the experience and who their clients say are the legends of customer service. That's Linda Craft Team Realtors. So listen, no matter where you live in the world, they're independently owned and operated, unaffiliated with any national company. So if you want an unbiased opinion of finding somebody in your area that can help you, right, go to Linda Craft Team Realtors. That's lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Erik Weir, who I enjoy being with you, man. It's just it's just a treat. I always have a lot of fun with you, and you're so insightful, and I just enjoy the time I get. So thank you for coming back again.
It's my pleasure, and so it's great to be on with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's just a joy. I know there's more I want to talk about in the book, but I think we need to spend this last segment kind of talking about a few things that are going on in the world, and maybe we'll get back to chapter 12, the 4 choices for success. But you know what? We just had recently the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. And then, of course, here I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and First Citizens here in Raleigh, North Carolina is going to buy up at least a portion of SVB Bank. What should people know about the SVB Bank collapse and the effects and the ripple effects to that?
Yeah, I think the system works. If you're with a bank, you have $250,000 of coverage with FDIC. If you have more than that, you may want to buy treasuries or treasury money markets. But what happened is really what's fascinating to me is with the PPP money, all the money given by the government to help arrest the economic decline caused by COVID, where you went from you had 24% unemployment like overnight. Money went into the system trying to arrest things. Well, what happens is banks receive, let's just use $1 million as an example. If they're allowed to lend or invest 90% of that, 10% they keep on hand. So the 90% they invest, they typically like to do loans, car loans, home loans, boat loans, whatever. And they underwrite the people and they know the people, and that's a good way to do business. But if deposits come in really, really fast, they're unable to do that. So they have to buy bonds. And what they did is they bought U.S. Treasury bonds. And yield managers have what's called a yield spread, 2-3%. So they make money, pay their bills, and they're in the business of getting money and trying to reinvest it. Well, they put lots of money in bonds. And when interest rates go up, bonds and interest rates have an inverse relationship. So as rates went up, the value of the bonds went down. So a 4% increase in the treasury on a 10-year treasury made its value go down by over 20%. And when that happened, when depositors said, "Hey, what's going on?" When there's a Silicon Valley Bank, so you have a very high-end bank, a lot of tech people, a lot of money went into that area, and they weren't borrowing money because they had money, right? And then later, people are laid off. Companies start spending money, bringing it down. They called it due, and then when they sold bonds to make to meet the demand for the redemption of cash, they took a loss. And when they took a loss, they called their shareholders and say, "Hey, put more money in." And their shareholders had to be venture capitalists, who maybe they even helped in the past. Instead of them saying, "Yeah, here's $2 billion for your losses, we're with you," they said, they hold the phone, "I want my money back too," right? And then one of them went on Instagram, Peter Thiel, and put the word out to other venture companies, and substantially all their deposits wanted their money back in a span of less than 2 weeks, most of which was the last 2 days. And when that happened, it's insolvent. So they had to sell bonds at 20% losses, but billions of dollars of losses. And those bonds were bought in a portfolio called buy to own or buy to hold. And the idea is they don't report it, the daily valuation changes, because the idea is they'll keep it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And only in this case, when they wanted the deposits back, they couldn't sell a loan fast enough. They had to sell the bonds, and that took a loss, and that made them insolvent. And that's what caused them to fail.
And what is the ripple effect for the everyday listener, or the people who listen to the show or watch the show? What's the ripple effect to them as a result of this?
Well, I think the ripple effect to them is is credit standards. I think bankers are going to be more cautious about making loans in the future. If you have a line of credit, you may want to be thoughtful about using it or what you want to do with it, because, or extending it, because in previous credit cycles, when the credit got difficult, banks sometimes will reevaluate the amount of exposure they're taking, the risk. And lines of credit are unknown, so it could be more. If they don't have liquidity, it's hard to fund another line of credit. So they may make credit standards tougher. And imagine sometimes they use different underwriting ratios. So for investment property, are different income or credit scores for residential property. So typically, when there's concern in the street, bankers often get more concerned. And Mark Twain had something funny to say. He said, "A banker is somebody who offers you an umbrella when it's sunny outside, and when it starts to rain, they promptly want it back." And that's kind of how it is with a line of credit. If you have a business with a line of credit, be thoughtful and aware that it could go away if that bank is facing financial concern. They may re-underwrite you in a different risk category and reduce your available credit. And they don't tell you in advance that just happened. So that's something to be cognizant of. That could happen. It has happened before. I'm not saying it will. And I'm not saying to be concerned, because the financial system is solid currently. But if everyone wanted their money back the same day, we're in what's called a fractional banking system. It's just not set up to handle that.
So what I'm hearing from you is, to people who are listening to the show that may be somewhat or concerned about this, some of the steps you maybe want to taking is reduce, get out of debt if you have debt. I'm hearing, that you probably want to make sure that um, you're, that you're taking care of what you need to take care of financially,
Mhm.
and making sure that you're working on your credit scores, getting them higher. Are those some of the things that we're
Yeah,
suggesting?
I think that's true. I think there's a preparedness to be, if you have a lot of cash, you're worried by treasuries are unlimitedly safe. But I also think if you have liquidity or you have treasuries, I think there'll be opportunities. You saw where Silicon Valley Bank sold $72 billion of their loans for citizens,
Yep.
your local bank, for 16.5 billion, which is a 78.5% discount. First Citizen stock went up 50% that day because it's such a shrewd move for them.
Right.
So when there is risk, there's opportunity. When there's fear, there's opportunity. And I think that's a pretty much a maxim in finance. And when you're involved in an illiquid market, meaning there's not a ready necessarily available buyers and sellers, then there are opportunities when somebody needs to sell. For example, you love your Jeep, right? And
Yeah.
maybe you could sell your Jeep to another Jeep lover really quickly. But if you said, "Oh, it's 4 o'clock today. I need to sell my Jeep by 7 p.m." And my market is, I'm holding the sign up in front of my building, and it says best offer takes this Jeep by 7 p.m. You may have paid $40,000 for it, and a kid goes by on a skateboard, says, "I'll give you $5." There's somebody else on the bicycle, "I'll give you 15," and then somebody says, "I'll give you 5,000." And if you've got to take the highest bidder that day, you're not getting what you have in the Jeep. And that's the kind of things that happen in illiquid financial markets, when there's fear and concern, and where one party needs liquidity rapidly. The party who has liquidity can often negotiate an amazing deal that just is not always around. So recognize there'll be opportunities, and I think maybe fantastic opportunities for those who are prepared.
Mm. You and I are big fans of real estate. We're
Yes.
really both big fans of real estate, investing in real estate, and you know what's going on with. I mean, maybe we should talk a little bit about why it's such a, why we like it, but also the issues of cap rates, because I think there's a lot of confusion for the general public on what is a cap rate and how does it work, and at the same time why real estate is, something that we really like.
So cap rate is basically a rate of return that an investor would want to have on a property, real estate in this example, should you pay cash. And I'll give you an example. If I can get $10,000 of income, and I think that I can buy a real estate asset, and I want to make 5% a year, then I would pay $200,000 for that 10,000 of income, because that's 5% of 200,000. But if cap rates change and they go up because of risk or inability to get loans, that cap rate goes from 5 to 10, which is a big change. They're not there now, but say it went to
Right.
10, then that same $10,000 divided by 0.1, that investor will only pay $100,000 for that same asset that they would have paid 200,000 for if their desired rate of return was 5%. Now it's 10. So the whole point is a very small change in cap rates can make a change of greater than 10% to the value of a real estate, and nothing happened. I mean, the roof didn't leak. The neighborhood is still the same neighborhood it was. The businesses are still leased, but the world changed. And that happened very quickly when you saw oil go to minus 40 a barrel in Texas. Buildings were selling at a 10 or 12 cap. Overnight, they were at a 5 cap. Just like a month earlier, because they thought oil's going, there's no more oil. There'll be no ability to pay this rent, so it's fictitious, and they bought property cheaply. And then it came right back over a year. They're back to where they were. So that person who bought during the fear made tremendous returns on their equity over a very short period of time. And things are very dynamic in real estate where they can change very quickly. And I say oftentimes it's often not distressed properties, it's distressed owners.
But we still like it.
Yeah. Well, it has benefits where
Right.
for a rental house, for example, you can depreciate it over 30 years or so. Take not the land, but the value of the improvement. So that helps you with your taxes. You have a tenant, and then they can pay your rent for you, which actually pays the interest, which you then in turn can deduct the interest as an expense, depreciation as expense, any management fees, upkeep as an expense, and then they're paying the payment and paying down the loan for you. So you start with a loan of one size, a little bit of equity, and over time they're paying the loan down for you, and hopefully you're having appreciation over time. So your equity or your return on your equity is going much higher, and it's not uncommon to have a return on equity in the teens with real estate, just because of those factors, and oftentimes it's substantially or entirely shielded from taxation due to deducting on interest and depreciation. And then it has something else called a 1031 exchange. If you're able to do so, that upon sale, you can yet again not pay taxes because you buy another piece of property. So real estate is one of the few assets that was really given certain tax advantages relative to other investments that make it very attractive.
Okay, we're getting close to the end of the show. I promised you that we would get you to talk about you've got a brand new program. It's called the 30K Power Up. That is exclusively for South Carolina.
That's right.
And so the last few minutes of the show, I want to let you go ahead and promote for those folks listening in South Carolina. I have a big contingent that watch and listen in South Carolina. So folks, go ahead. What is the 30K Power Up?
The 30K Power Up, I came up with my mind during COVID, where people I saw depression, separation, anxiety, concern. And I'm like, the people I saw doing well were those who were getting out of their house and starting their own hustle or their own business. And some businesses have grown rapidly in the last few years, right? So I thought, well, what can I do to encourage entrepreneurism? Most of the jobs created in America are from small businesses, and almost it's like over half the jobs created and over half the jobs in America are with small businesses, many of which are sole proprietors. So I said, what can I do to encourage and foster that? So I thought three things. I could give away cash prizes. So first place entrepreneur in the 30K Power Up gets $15,000, right? If they submit a video, a business plan, if they win, they get 15,000. Second place is 10. Third place is 5. And the winners also have access to some coaching. I give for myself for a period of time, and also in my office building, I give the winner free rent for a period of time as well. And you can learn more about it. You see my name on the screen, Erik Weir, ERIKWEIR, but just add a .com to it, and it has information on how to apply and how to participate in the 30K Power Up. And along the way, we give feedback and coaching for free. So, hey, I liked your business plan. You're not a finalist, but why don't you try these 2 things, or work on that? And if you're a finalist, then we'll give you time and energy and maybe even capital. We'll see what happens. It's our one of one, so we'll see where we go with it. But we do want to encourage entrepreneurism, people to reinvent themselves and to go for it. And if you're a company that hasn't received more than $500,000 in funding, you qualify.
That's awesome. Well, we did it. We did an hour. I mean, and then
yeah,
that's pretty. It's pretty. It's always fun being with you, man. I really do appreciate you coming on the show again. And this book, Who's Eating Your Pie, is outstanding. I can't encourage enough for folks. It's more than just a finance book. It is a success book. It's a life success book. I'm just telling you, it's fantastic. You heard him on the show, but I'm just telling you, get it. You really are going to do yourself and your family a tremendous favor and benefit by purchasing the book. So please, again, it's called Who's Eating Your Pie? Essential Financial Advice that will transform your life. And I promise you it will. Hey, folks, that's the show. You know what I say to you every week, right? You're in control of three things at all times. That is your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. I know that you can be going through tough circumstances, but the truth of the matter is, you know what? You can always control your attitude. You can always control how excellent you want to be, and that's your effort. And you can always get back up again if you want to get back up again. Nothing is stopping you, but you're in control of that. So take control of those things right now. I'm going to be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great book. It's going to be another great show. As I say to you all over, listen, you had a lot of choices. You chose us. I thank you for choosing a new direction. Give us a like, give us a review, let people know. And as I say to you everywhere, all over the world, and you know what that is? Ciao, everybody.